welcome to Alexa Developer Office Hours today. I'm your host, Amanda Lang. I'm here by myself today, except not really. Actually, today, joining me on the show, I'm going to have the ADAC team. We're going to be discussing the certification process and lots of stuff surrounding that. Thank you, folks, for joining in today. We don't have Jeff today, so this is my first solo official office hours, but I think it'll be a really good time and a really good conversation. Before we get started with today's show, I want to include some announcements. We have a new Alexa Tech Talk going up next week. It's going to be about our design guide. So I'm going to post that link in the chat right now. If you're not familiar with our Alexa Tech Talks, which you probably are, be sure to tune into that one. It's going to be a great talk. It's featuring Helen Husband and Allison Atwell, our senior VUI designer and product marketing manager from Alexa. Super excited to show off that stuff. Next week, there will not be a office hours because I'm on vacation. So mark your calendar for that tech talk instead. So you have something to watch next week. It's going to be just as informative and fantastic. We also have our new Devs and Coffee blog series, video blog series that started up to this week. It is on the YouTube. If you want to hear some really cool little conversations, short and sweet conversations with some of our top developers, be sure to check out that Devs and Coffee series. That is running right now. We just posted the first episode. If you're on the YouTube, then you already see it. If you're on Twitch, just be sure to check out our YouTube. I also want to post a link to one of our new blogs. This is a blog from IRA Digital that is showing off some cool stuff that company has done. If you haven't checked out our developer blogs, we're always showing off like companies, what they're creating, what they're producing. And I think you'll find some more cool information there. So enough announcements. That's all we got for today. I'm going to bring on our guests from the ADAC team, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I think I have a recommended order to bring people on the stream, but I'll bring y'all on at once.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah. Hello, my name is Mihai. I joined Amazon some 5 years ago as a certification tester. I believe the 5-year anniversary was something at the end of February. Back then, yeah, thank you very much. I already have the orange color for the, yeah. Okay, so I joined the team back when here in OTP, when Bucharest, I mean. When the team was 4 people strong, and that's before the French catalog launched for Alexa. So I've seen her develop a lot. My role now is that of a process improvement specialist for the Frights team, and it's very interesting as a role.
Great, thank you. You know, I'm just about to celebrate my 1 year at Amazon. I started June 20th, so
yeah, I remember that one as well. I had cookies.
I'm going to be on vacation during my 1 year, which is ironic, but it happens. We'll go on down the line. I think Alice is next.
Sure. Hi, my name is Alice Ciobanu, and I've been working for Amazon for 2 years and 10 months, actually. I got hired on 6th of June.
Oh, we're another June hire. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. I started as a trainer for the Spanish team for Alexa certification skills, and meanwhile I became a trainer, and currently I'm coordinating the trainings for new joiners here, and also I'm handling the How's My Driving process. This is the section at the end of the email feedback where the developers can leave a score and comments related to the certification feedback received.
I saw a hi from Barcelona in our Twitch chat, so you've got some folks out there and speaking Spanish.
Nice. I'm Christoph Roulet. I've been with Amazon for about 1.5 years. I work for the DE team, and I work at the Berlin office, or one of our Berlin offices. And yeah, it's been amazing so far. I'm glad that everybody's meeting their 1 years and hires in June.
Is everybody in different time zones? Where are y'all joining us from?
Berlin.
Awesome.
And it's here in Bucharest, yeah.
Oh, nice. So it's later in the day for you. It's like it's noon for me, which is
that's why I wear the this is a vacation shirt. So
vacation shirt. You're ready to take the day. You're ready to take the rest of the day off. Well, thank you for joining us, despite the fact that you'd rather take it. It's great. It's great that you've been flexible. We actually were going to have you on the show when we were at the offsite, and then it kind of fell through. So we appreciate your flexibility with that as well. Appreciate it. So what we're here to talk about today is certification process, which is always a big source of questions for our developers. I think there's always a lot of uncertainty, and I think you're here to just like help talk about like what that process is like, and how we can communicate with each other during that certification process. So I guess my first question is just like, when a developer presses that button to submit for review, what is the process? Like, if I say I have my skills ready, I'm going to submit to certification. How does that process go?
Okay. Yeah, I will take that question. So first of all, I would like to mention the fact that anyone who has ever developed a skill for Alexa, whether hobbyist, experienced programmer, or a professional agency, must pass through a certification review to have their skill published to the catalog. Depending on which countries and languages are selected for publication, different certification teams in several countries around the world work to review the skill. The process is built to keep the certification consistent at a global level with constant communication between the teams. The testing plan, which is the collection of test questions that apply to a specific skill, depending on which skill type, functionality, and implemented interfaces is generated, and we can move to the actual certification work. The test question the test questions that the certification testers are evaluating for a skill can then be divided in two distinct classes: functional testing and policy testing. These are then further split into 5 activities, which are functional, security, and spoken language understanding activities for the functional testing, and content policy and customer experience activities for policy testing. As soon as testers have completed the review by answering all the questions of the test plan for that particular skill, a feedback message is consolidated in an email template, cross-checked, and sent to the developer. This is not the end of our commitment to developers, nor the end of the skills lifecycle. As with most activities related to development of content online, the key to success is continuous improvement. This is what attracts the customers and keeps them interested in interacting with the skill. If the skill passes certification review, it will be available in the Alexa skill store. However, the developer may decide to improve the skill and resubmit. In certification, we call this a version upgrade. If publication is not possible, the required changes will be listed in the feedback email when, when we receive a resubmission of a skill that was previously failed. One of the first checks that we do is to verify that the previously provided feedback is correctly implemented. We do our best to ensure that each and every feedback is complete and correct for the current iteration of the skill. This is how we apply Amazon's culture of customer obsession. However, we realize that sometimes the information supplied may not be enough to satisfy the customer's needs, and we develop 2 other communication channels. The certification team appreciates developer feedback. And I think Alice already mentioned this, but we have something in the email feedback called the How's My Driving survey. This is the way to provide feedback for that email that you received. If you are interested in sharing your experience, this survey is included in all emails sent by the team. There you will find a scale by which you can grade the level of satisfaction with the feedback received. You can also write a short description of your experience there, and we recommend including as many details as possible. We use this information to continuously improve our work. I cannot stress enough how important it is for that feedback to be there. If developers still have questions about the feedback or need further technical assistance, our developer advocate team will be happy to help. Feel free to contact them via the Contact Us form, linked in the footer of any email sent from the certification teams. Sometimes we include this link even in the introduction of our feedback. If through multiple submissions of a skill, we observe that the developer has difficulties implementing the requested changes as instructed. Again, we highly recommend using any of the 2 means of communication I presented here to provide feedback for the testing that we've done at any point in the certification cycle.
Great. So you had a visual. Let me know when you want me to show that on the screen. You'll give me the heads up. Okay, great. because we have some process stuff that we're talking about. But I do see a comment in the chat. Maybe you can talk a little bit to this. Brian Tarbox mentions, one of the most frustrating parts of certification is when a skill has been upgraded and then it fails due to something that has been in the skill already for years.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it happens. Yes. The most frustrating thing is like when, let's say, information is missing from the testing instructions. We will talk about that later on. It's very important to have enough information. Or we encounter a lot of errors, especially for new versions, when we receive a skill again in certification and we discover the accounting credentials do not work anymore, or devices are not connected to the account that we are trying to test on, let's say for smart home skills. And that's very frustrating because that doesn't allow us to provide a complete feedback for the skill. And it creates friction sometimes because the developer has to receive an incomplete feedback, right? And then he has to submit again for us to test it. So yeah, I'm doing the best as a process improvement specialist to work with other teams and see how we can improve that information gathering for developers before they submit to certification.
Great. And that how's my driving and the contact us stuff features, super important and super useful to all of you to make sure that your processes are keeping track of customers' needs, right?
Yeah. There are actually. I mean, everything that is important about the skill should be included for certification in the testing instructions. And of course, there's something that is limiting the functionality of the skill for our customers in the description.
Is there a way to speed up the certification process, like make the cycles go faster?
The only way to do that is like to make sure that everything works before you submit to certification, because of course we will check them, and we don't take pleasure in providing feedback. Really, we want these skills to be as good as possible for our customers and developers alike, for them to have success. But in order to do that, we must make sure they work before you press that submit button.
Cool. Let's move on to the next question, because I know everybody kind of has different questions that they want to take and answer. And Christoph, I have one for you. What advice do you have for developers that are creating their first skill?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot to look out for. One of the first challenges developers will face when creating a new custom skill is choosing an appropriate invocation name. So the right invocation name plays a big part in the skill's success. It needs to be really easy to remember by customers. It should identify the skill's functionality and be easily recognizable by Alexa when spoken by customers. What's more important is once the skill passes the certification and has gone live and is accessible to Alexa users, the invocation name for the published locale cannot be changed. So it's really important to choose the right invocation name for your skill before the first submission. There are quite a few rules that developers need to consider when selecting an invocation name for their skill. And all of these can be found in the Alexa documentation page called Choose the Invocation Name for a Custom Skill. And to name a few rules that apply to all locales, we have all the obvious requirements. And let me just name a few, or the ones necessary. The skill invocation name cannot infringe upon the intellectual property rights of an entity or a person. One-word invocation names are not allowed unless the invocation name is unique to your brand or intellectual property. If that's the case, this would need to be verified during certification. So we'd ask the developers to provide appropriate documentation for that to us certification teams and use the testing instructions field for that. The invocation name must be written in each language that you choose to support. And to that, I'd like to add that the invocation name can contain English words if these words are commonly used in that language. And in cases where the spelling differs between the local language and the English, developers must use the spelling of the local language. If you believe that your invocation name contains words that are not in the dictionary, please also provide, a proof of rights for the term you wish to use in this case.
Got it. So, like, if I'm typing out a skill in the UK, I'm going to put the letter U in, like, color. And if I'm typing out a skill in the USA, then I don't put the letter U in the
absolutely.
word color.
That's what you're looking for. Try to respect the spelling of the locale. If you're doing UK or US, same applies to other languages that we'll cover down the line. Absolutely.
We had
Apart from
Dag
those,
answer a question. I'm going to briefly
yeah,
address
sure,
this because we
please.
had Dag answer a question in our chat. I think somebody like copy pasted the repo, so that's why I flashed on the screen there for a second. But
Sure.
thank you, Dag, because I wasn't sure and I wasn't able to copy paste the repo because I didn't want to interrupt this conversation here. But I think we got an answer for our Twitch question in the chat, which was, is this repo deprecated? Which I'm going to let you guys know. We are actually deprecating a lot of our GitHub stuff. And the reason that we're doing that is just to be sure that the GitHub stuff is refreshed. So you might see like stuff getting deprecated in GitHub. I think we're just trying to keep the best stuff forward. So always double check and make sure that the code you're looking at in GitHub is up to date, because I think that a lot of our stuff has kind of been phased out. The repos are archived now, and I think they've archived several deprecated repos. So sorry to say that, but the reason that we're doing it is just to be sure that the code you see in our GitHub is the right stuff that's up to date. So if you see it's deprecated, I hate to like say, oh, that's bad news, but that's the reason we've archived a bunch of the GitHub. And I think it happened relatively recently. So thanks to our teams for taking care of cleaning up the GitHub, because I think it's really important to be sure that all of our code's up to date, and they're working on doing that. So thank you for your question, and thanks a lot for the answer there from the team as well. Sorry to interrupt your conversation, though, about the invocation name requirements, because this is super important stuff. Invocation name is just how people find your skill. So getting it right is pretty important. And definitely with that intellectual property stuff, you have to be sure that it's your IP. You can't just steal somebody else's brand, right? So if you're making some kind of unofficial trivia skill, for example, you got to label it unofficial, right?
Yeah, of course. If you're going to do Trivial Pursuit, make it Trivial Pursuit unofficial or whatever else it is, or else you're going to have to provide the proof of right so that you are allowed to do so by the owner of this intellectual property that you.
And I think we also have a link out as well to a blog helping you to choose the right invocation name for your skills.
We do.
Great. Cool.
So those are the general rules. I have some more specific rules for the locales that apply to German. So we could go through those.
Sure.
So what you really want to do is you want to use the umlauts where necessary, especially for villages, counties, towns, and so forth. And use the original term and not add on an umlaut. You need to have spaces between specific terms like Sender, Hits, Musik, the classic German words. Even though they may be compounded by the regular rule, you're going to have to separate them. Numbers must be spelled out, so 102, things like those. Yeah, and if you're using language in general, always make sure to spell check using a dictionary for your locale. It's just the best practice.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a number of quite popular German skills I've noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the second biggest market. Let me ask Alice to tell you more about French and Italian and Spanish, because I'm just here for German. So
Yes,
she has some
Christoph.
tips and tricks.
Actually, I'm working for France, Italy, and Spain, so I will cover all these three countries. I would like to mention that the general restriction regarding invocation names not containing any connection words like prepositions does not apply for French, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese. A restriction applies only for two-word invocation names, which are not allowed if one of the words is a definite article, il, la, indefinite article, uno, una, preposition, a, per, prepositional article, dei, degli, possessive adjective, mio, mia. For example, mio forno, una bicicletta, l'avion are not valid invocation names for skills. Besides this, in French and Italian, all required apostrophes should be present in invocation name. Please ensure to add a space after all apostrophes to increase the chance that Alexa recognizes the invocation name. Examples such as son d'animaux should be written as son space letter D apostrophe space animaux. Or l'avion grand vitesse as letter L apostrophe space avion space grand space vitesse. There is only one approved exception, and this is for aujourd'hui, where the space after the apostrophe is not required. Grammar related also, all the accents should be included on letters where appropriate. For example, nomicosecita should be written with the appropriate grave accent on the letter A at the end of the word chita. Thank you, Christoph.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. Those are some great tips. And I mean, as Amanda mentioned earlier, the invocation name is really, really important. it is, once it's fixed, it's there, and we want to make sure that the customers really are able to breach the skill every single time they utter it. That's why it's so important, and we stress this so strongly because it's the main reason for skills to fail the certification process in their first 2-3 submissions.
So basically, in the Spanish and French and Italian regions, it can't just be like a thing. It has to be two unique words. Exactly. Right. It has
A
to be
beautiful thing. We accept
right.
a beautiful thing.
It has to have an adjective or something.
That's just something or
differentiate it from
the
all the other.
preposition.
Differentiate it from all the other things that could just be the same object. So that, having the doesn't count, basically, or the equivalent, or mine, or whatever. It doesn't count. Interesting. Good rules to follow, but it's also like more unique, right? Because that makes it your thing as opposed to just any old thing.
Yeah, you want to have it match your skill. You want to have it match in the language that matches the skill title. Everything's supposed to be, holistically come together.
And I also see a comment on Twitch. In Spain, we have regional languages like Catalan. It would be great to have Alexa answer in some regional language using poly voices. Interesting comment. I don't think it's possible now, but that may be possible in the future, maybe.
Yeah, I think that that can be prepared. I mean, it must be prepared beforehand to have that poly voice ready.
Different dialects of different languages can vary quite a bit, especially I know in Spanish, because you have Mexican versus Spain, and they definitely have like a different vibe. And then South America, they have like even more different. Of course, U.S. English varies a lot too, as you mentioned. Adding different letters to English depending on what country you're coming from with English. So there's all kinds of variants. How would you help Alexa to recognize some uncommon words, especially in Spanish?
Yeah, sorry. I opened
Anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will try to answer that. So, for how would we prepare Alexa to recognize? It's just like it has to be used in order for her to understand exactly to answer to that. So basically, she needs to learn it by use, and she can do that. Let's say.
So it's kind of more on our end than on the developer's end to figure out how those uncommon words get processed, I think. Love to hear some examples, by the way, if you've got them out there in chat land. But thank you. This is really cool stuff. I always love hearing how different stuff is localized for different regions. How around the world we can support different developers and their different languages. So that's really cool. Alice, I'm going to throw it back to you. Do you know, let us know, what are the most common reasons why certification might be rejecting a skill? How can my skill got rejected? What's the most common reasons people fail?
Actually, for this, we took into consideration our internal reports for 2023, and the most common reasons for failure of French, Italian, Spanish, and German language skills from a functional point of view are the following. First of all, incorrect, incomplete description. Second of all, error or invalid responses given by the skill when invoking the example phrases that are included in the customer-facing information. A third one would be error or invalid responses given by the skill when invoking the sample utterances defined in intent schema. A fourth one would be related to issues with reaching or finding devices connected to smart home skill test accounts. And the last one, error or invalid responses given by the skill when invoking the vocalized utterances encountered in the skill responses inside the welcome prompt, the help prompt, different intent responses, and so on. Now we can start with the description. Most of the failures for description are for incomplete information, grammar errors, example phrases with incorrect invocation name or without the wake word. We do the same check for short description, long description, and the what's new section text fields that developer encounter in the Alexa developer portal. Alexa customers should be able to understand the skills functionality from reading the description. If the functionality or setup instructions of the skill are introduced in any URL, the testers and the users should be able to have access to that space since the certification stage. In case it goes live, for the user to have access for it, and for us, the testers, to be able to set up the skill, the account linking for the skill. Now, take for example, configure your gaming console to play games using Alexa. A description like this is actually too general and it fails to inform the customer of the minimum requirements for using this skill. Now, here is how a complete and correct version of the description should sound like. It explains everything customers need and how to activate and use the skill. So, you can now play games on your product with the help of this Alexa skill. Choose from a wide variety of game versions and turn your room into a voice-activated game station. Activate the skill and link your Alexa devices to your brand name here account to start interacting with your devices by name. Please refer to the console's manual instruction to understand how to create an account. Including the skills functionality and features in the description is especially important for smart home skills. The description must mention compatible devices and all functions these can perform. It also should include example phrases such as Alexa turn on the Wi-Fi, Echo set the thermostat to 180 degrees, Alexa show the camera, Echo turn up the volume to 2 to better explain the functionalities your device can perform. Actually, we have some good news. We recently updated the Alexa Skill Kit Smart Home API's interface pages and included translated versions of all these example phrases for all available languages. So
Oh,
we
that's
highly
great.
recommend, yes, we highly recommend using these pages as a reference to prepare the customer facing information for your smart home skills. Now, as for the previous example, if you have a smart home skill that only works with a specific device or brand of devices, please mention this in description and make sure to properly explain to customers how to perform the account linking and which accounts to link with Alexa. It's very important also.
Mhm. So basically, when you have this description, you want to be absolutely sure that it has all the information someone would need to really understand how to use your skill.
Exactly. For a better customer experience. We try to put ourselves in the foot of the users and how would I like to see as a user this description, how it would be more easier for me to read, understand, and use the skill.
Mhm.
Now, now, regarding the second and the third functional failure reasons, all the example phrases presented by the skill, written in the skills information page or spoken by Alexa should always return a valid response, since these are most likely to be invoked by the user. We expect that all customer-facing example phrases are supported by the skills intent schema, and when spoken as presented, Alexa responds with a relevant answer. This also applies to all vocalized example phrases spoken by Alexa in the skills welcome prompt, help prompt, skill interaction, as this is the fifth reason for failure in certification. Now, going to the fourth, the last most encountered failure in certification is related to smart home devices response. Please ensure that all devices discovered respond positively after accepting voice commands via smart home APIs, also known as interfaces. It is essential that the skill returns a positive response as per user request. Alexa should inform the customers of device status changes or if the respective device does not support the requested command. If Alexa is returning a device name is not responding message, it's likely that the Lambda function did not send the confirmation that the directive was handled, and we cannot confirm if the device is functional or not. As Alexa generally waits around 8 seconds for your response to before timing out, the Lambda function must respond within 8 seconds. Now, Amanda, are there any other questions to respond to related to functional?
I think that's pretty much all I have. I noticed a little conversation in the chat from a response to one of our Twitch watchers, Hawk2000. Thank you, Dag, for answering that question. It seems like that, when the invocation name might be something a little bit less common, our engineers are trying to perform the accuracy tests to make sure that we can get that invocation name sorted out so people can actually use it in their skills. So it's great to have our responsiveness from everybody who's working on these different languages, because as for me, I pretty much only speak English. I speak a little Spanish, but not enough to not I'd want to try it on stream. So Here's another question from Twitch chat before I go back to throwing it back while back in your court. We'd really like to be able to contact the CERT team member who failed a skill because opening a contact us ticket is very hit or miss. Is there a way to know like which CERT member you're talking to? Because I know that I've seen developers say, well, I opened a contact us ticket, but I'm not sure which person I'm talking to, and they failed my skill for a different reason than the last person failed my skill for.
Actually, these are separate teams. The certification team doesn't actually handle the How's My Drive or the DAG part. Um, the skill cannot be certified by the same person all over again because we take vacation leaves. We are multiple people testing for the same locals. So yes, indeed, it can be tested the skill once by somebody. Some failures maybe didn't apply at the time. Maybe some internal processes changed meanwhile. Now the skill is processed by somebody new. Some other failures are given. We have also new joiners sometimes. These are tricky situations that we try to avoid, and we try to avoid to get to the developers and affect them in any way. But actually, when they contact DAG, for example, DAG will contact the tester for more information. So no matter who will answer them, they can get in contact for the certification tester and ask for more questions. Everybody will be able to respond them as the
Yeah.
as
Can
Yeah,
I
and
add
I
something?
think
Yeah.
yeah, I was
Okay.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to add to this. Elise has mentioned very, very good reasons why there could be a different result, but we all work very, very hard globally to align to use the same processes to evaluate your skill in the same way along the same guidelines without any differentiation. There could always be a discrepancy between version 1 and 2, even with the same tester. It's a case by case basis, but we really try and work hard to all be along on the same page for the same things.
And also, I would like to add again that you can use both the How's My Driving survey and the Contact Us form to reach the certification teams. Maybe the tester is not available at that time, but someone will answer with, we will have that case evaluated with, let's say, experts within the teams, and we will provide an answer that will clarify your question.
Yeah. Certification is both a human process and an automated process. So it has some of the problems of both of those types of processes, right? Humans, differ in our way of handling issues, and automation sometimes misses things that humans don't miss. So there's all kinds of reasons why there can be a little bit of different stuff between those two processes. But yeah, that makes sense. So now we've gone through all the basics. I don't think you have any more slides. If you do, let me know.
I would like to continue with the policy most failure.
Oh, excellent. You have a little bit more to
Please,
show for that. Let me go ahead and
yes.
put that back on the stream because we want to make sure that we cover all the bases there.
Now, on the policy side of testing, the most encountered reasons for failure are the following. We have one, incorrect language for skill metadata, example phrases, skill responses, audio content, privacy policy and terms of use pages, notifications, visual content, and account linking page if applicable. So if the skill is submitted for the French catalog, but the metadata is in English or any other language, it will fail certification.
Got it.
A second reason, related to invocation name issues, words that are not following the Alexa conventions for spelling or that are not present in the dictionary, nor a brand presented earlier by Christoph. A third reason would be issues with Amazon intellectual property infringements, what you were saying, Amanda, at the beginning, in the metadata or welcome phrase. And the last one would be related to invalid privacy policy for skills that collect personal identifiable information. Now, some tips and tricks to avoid these failures. First of all, the skills audio and visual content must be presented in the language of the selected local.
Right.
If you choose to upload the skill in multiple languages, we allow skills with content in other Alexa supported languages only if the description is also translated in the primary local language and includes a disclaimer stating that the skill's content is in another language. A working example for disclaimer can be like this: the skill content is in, and specify the language used in the skill. Now, it is required to provide a disclaimer in the language that corresponds to each local selected. So, if you choose to upload the skill in Italian with the content in English, please notify the customer in the skills description with a disclaimer like il contenuto della skill è in inglese, in Italian. Also, to avoid rejection related to intellectual property infringement on Amazon brands, non-Alexa products or services, developers should avoid the references to the Amazon's trademark or brand in the customer-facing information, such as the opening phrase, the skill name, developer name, icon, privacy policy, terms of use, and account linking URLs. So, besides this, please avoid any images displaying the Amazon logo, Amazon Alexa logo.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
an infringement.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Because that's our IP. You can't use our IP.
Yeah.
there are by the
Show
way,
us some proof of rights.
as somebody who's worked with graphic design, there are use rules for the Alexa logo. Like there's times when you can use it, but you can't use it in your own skill. Right?
Yes.
Is that the
Correct.
rule? Right. Got it. And that privacy policy thing, really important. I've seen that people just have the link to the privacy policy is broken and doesn't work. And unfortunately, if you're collecting any user data, I mean, well, fortunately for our customers, right? We need to have that privacy policy up to date and working to be sure that if you're collecting data, that you specify what you're doing with that data.
Exactly. And I will tell you more about this.
Go ahead.
Now, I have something very important related to the vendor's website with subdomain or domain roots such as alexa.privatepolicy.com, excluded.
Mm-hmm.
Terms of use.alexa.com. These are rejected in certification.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, a description that claims the skill is an official Amazon skill or that it endorses or represents Amazon in any way, again, it's not allowed. Please avoid to directly combine third-party trademarks with Amazon trademarks. For example, the correct convention when referring to Alexa skill is title skill for Amazon Alexa, not title Alexa skill. That's combined.
Got it.
Now, going back to the privacy policy, we also validate if a privacy policy is provided for all the skills that collect personally identifiable information. This is another top failure for the policy part. The privacy policy URL should redirect users directly to the privacy policy document. You can find the information about what constitutes a valid privacy policy in the Alexa documentation page called Certification Requirements for Privacy Policy URLs. This was created by our colleagues from Developer Advocacy Group. Thank you.
Thanks, Faye.
Now, the three main reasons for privacy policy failures are the following. As you are saying, there is no privacy policy URL provided, or the privacy policy URL directs the users to a blank page. It doesn't exist. And the third one, the privacy policy URL directs user to a web page from which they have to find another link or click on another tab to actually lead them to the privacy policy website.
Mhm.
No, please add a direct link for the privacy policy. And this should be specific to the skill, vendor, or developer. If the skill title, vendor name, or developer doesn't match, please then provide valid proof of rights in testing instructions.
Yeah, it has to link directly to the policy. It has to be your policy, not someone else's from some random site, right? And it has to be a valid link, essentially,
Yes,
among other
I'm
things.
done.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that with us. I know that privacy policy stuff is just super important. You just because it tells people what you're doing with their data, and we need to have that to make sure the skill. If it collects data, of course, you don't necessarily need it if the skill doesn't collect customer data, right? Yeah.
No,
Go.
we have a
No,
list.
and I wanted to say, like, if the skill collects information about the customers but doesn't use them as a functionality within the skill, that is actually rejected.
Oh, okay.
So you must have a reason to use that information. And we have a lot of skills that fail because the developer tries to collect some information about the customer from their account, but then they don't use that information at all within the skill.
So when you collect any info, go ahead.
Yeah, this works in each direction. As Mihai said, if you're collecting information and you don't have a privacy policy, you're going to fail. If you don't collect information and you provide us a privacy policy that is not worth actually clicking on, then you're going to fail as well. So if you have a radio skill that doesn't collect PII, then just don't, fill out that link. Do not use that testing instruction field for your link. Just provide us with the things that go in that field and go in the other field. Don't add any ads. Don't add anything else. Make sure that the things you add are functional and go with the stuff that you actually need. If you're not collecting PII, don't provide a privacy policy.
Because you don't need it. And it just is it's just one more thing to go wrong, basically.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. But in a lot of cases, like if you're collecting a name or something like that, or if you're collecting personal information about where the customer is, it needs to be needed for the function of your skill.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're not going to pass. You can't just collect
first
it for
name
no
is
reason.
fine. First name is fine, but as soon as we get into social security numbers, date of birth, location, geolocation, all of those kinds of things, that is PII, and then you have to provide a privacy policy page.
And it needs to be necessary for your skill to function.
Yes.
In some way. So like if you're doing a food delivery skill, like naturally you need to know where they live.
Yes. Even if they don't know, but if you provide that information through the skill, then I am collecting it as a developer.
Got it. Comment on Twitch. To be honest, the work of the certification team can see things that are overlooked during developing process, and it's definitely helpful, especially when using audio or video directives. So kudos to you guys. Thank you for providing information. It is true because in a lot of cases, we developers don't necessarily have every device, for example. I mean, I have a few devices. Jeff had like every device. I have a few. Let's just say a few. So I can test on a variety of devices, but I can't test on every single device that's out there, especially as we continue to support more and more devices. So it's always good to have that extra feedback from the certification team to let us know like what might not be working on particular devices. Another question on YouTube. Nikki asks, can I get the whole transcript of the user's request phrase? I want to be able to support an open-ended conversation. Right now, you can't not get that. That is not something that we provide. But what we usually use for the open-ended chat type skills, which are becoming increasingly popular, is a search query. And Dad can chip in here and tell me like exactly, but the search query on Alexa will let you basically like use an open-ended conversation. So if you are interested in having that kind of open-ended conversation with it, try the search query. That's sort of the way that you kind of get around that. You cannot get like their actual thing, but you can search on whatever they said. And, if you've got a social chatbot type skill, that's the way to go.
Side note, if you're going to use that search query part, it has to be used with a carrier phrase. You can't just use it on its own. We do not allow that because you're opening all gates.
Right. If you have any more certification feedback about that question from the standpoint of an open-ended chat, how do those skills get? Because I think sometimes there's confusion about whether or not that's certifiable. Something that like interfaces with there we go. There's the documentation for search query. Yeah. Thank you for posting that. So moving on, since I think that's all my chat questions, let's just talk about what's good. What kind of tips and tricks do you have from our developers from the point of view of testers that will help out developers and get them through the certification and that testing process?
Yeah, I will take that question. So I'd start with an essential resource for us testers, the testing instructions. I said it before, but I will repeat it because I think it's important. These can be the map of our testing journey, a handy way for developers to communicate with testers and offer tips and tricks for interacting with the skill. The testing instructions should include any specific steps or means to link the account or reach testing third-party software. We encountered skills actually where the third-party software was not available yet in the marketplace, that information about how to reach that software needs to be in the testing instructions. And again, I will have to repeat myself with account linking credentials. These need to be entered in the testing fields that were recently introduced, called test username and test password fields. These testing instructions can also include links to any brand or intellectual property documentation and relevant locale specifics. Let's say if a skill is launched on multiple locales, but the Alexa shopping feature is only available on selected locales, then this needs to be let's say included in the testing instructions for certification. It's also crucial to include navigation steps to achieve skills functionality. If there are any special conditions that need to be met, like what to say and in what order, so as to complete an escape game or reach a certain game level where the future new features are available, then that should be included in the testing instructions. There's really never too much information to put in the testing instructions.
Right.
And we request you to use it to, let's say, efficiently communicate with testers before the certification testing begins.
So the more info you give the testers on how to actually test your skill properly, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, it increases your chance that the skill will pass even the first time. We had cases where there was a certain skill in the past. There were all kinds of stories in that skill. It was a very important launch for Amazon and the developer alike. But those stories, you had to pass certain checks for you to get at the end of the story. And in certification, we needed to test all those steps, but we couldn't because we didn't have the instructions. Of course, at the time, we were very, let's say, lucky because we could get in touch with the developer, and he provided the handy, let's say, PDF of all the steps that we need to take in order to reach the skills functionality in its entirety.
Got it. So if you're writing something like an interactive story, which is what it sounds like you're talking about, be sure to also provide the testers with the golden path to completing the interactive story so they don't get lost and confused and can't figure out how to beat your game. Just tell them, tell them. give them the full walkthrough. That's really great advice.
Yeah, of course, we need to interact with the entire skill in order to make sure that the feedback we provide to you is really relevant for your skill.
Great. What other any other tips or tricks you guys want to share?
I think Elise has a couple more. I have a couple more as well. So I think
You
Elise
can
gets to go
start.
first.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sure. We already talked about privacy policy and all those. I'd like to focus on punctuation just for a bit. It's a small thing. Yeah, they're small little dots, but they do cause some problems here and there, especially in skill responses. And if you have punctuation, that you make mistakes in, like in the middle of responses, Alexa will read those out, and that's really disruptive for users. So trying to avoid spacing before and after your punctuation marks. Try to avoid multiple punctuation marks or uncommon characters that don't belong there. When you're writing your sample utterances for the slot values, or either or both, try and make sure that you use proper punctuation for the abbreviations, with a period after the space after each letter and so forth. And keep pronunciation in mind so that it stays normal. If you have things or words that have the same pronunciation for their pair, use the pair in the sample utterances to maximize the chance that Alexa is going to respond correctly to the user's request. Include accented characters where applicable. And as Elise mentioned earlier, make sure you have your space after the apostrophe for the French Italian to make sure that Alexa understands it best. Those are really, when it comes to punctuation and pronunciation, make sure you really cross the I's and dot the T's.
Yeah. Punctuation counts. And if you a lot of, like, for example, in Spanish, there's a lot of accents over letters and stuff. You do have to make sure that you include those of the words pronounced properly.
Everything.
The user finds it irritating when it's not exactly as its normal flow.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that'd be really annoying because you expect the accent to be in the right location when you hear the word and you hear the word wrong. I know that when I was playing around, I was trying some different languages, like just phonetically spelling them out. And when you're coding, you can actually like phonetically spell stuff out to be sure Alexa pronounces it properly, which I think is a nice feature.
Nice. Actually, Amanda, correct language is extremely important as well. It's users first direct contact with the quality of the skill. The skill description, for example, should not contain any errors in terms of grammar, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, or unnatural language, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We had some time ago, we had a skill whose English description explained that the skill functionality was to make dogs say bark, bark. This was translated to French as a course, probably using one of the online translation tools available. And in the end, this meant that the skill's functionality was to make dogs say tree bark. So totally different.
Totally different.
Now we realize that the developers cannot speak all the languages. So
Right.
what we recommend is to use a spell checker. And if you resort to automated translation, please ensure it makes sense in the target language as much as possible. If not, definitely our testers, which are proficient language speakers, who will provide feedback to correct any errors. Now, frequent mishaps we encounter are related to using literal translation of the word skill, like in French, compétence, Italian, abilità, Spanish, habilidad, or German, I will let
Yeah,
Christoph pronounce it.
we get it Fähigkeit a lot.
Oh, but you shouldn't do that though.
No, that's a
No.
direct translation. We try to really avoid those.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
please ensure to
just
stick
stick
to
to
the
skill.
skill. If you
In all
refer to
languages.
Alexa catalog skills inside Alexa catalog are skills, and that's all.
Got it.
And this is a feminine noun for French, Italian, and Spanish, and for German actually is masculine. So
Interesting.
please use it at the proper noun, because otherwise it will be failed.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
It's one of the few things we're really, really strict about.
Making sure that the proper noun, the gender of the noun is correct. Yeah, use skill, not some translation of the word skill. Got it. That's cool info. I love English. English doesn't have gendered nouns. That's the one, we don't have to worry about getting that right in English.
Actually,
English has other problems though.
We
English has a lot of words that sound the same but are spelled differently and stuff like that. So English has got some definite pitfalls.
Nice. We have something else that we encountered. When referring to the sections or tab names in the Alexa Companion app or Alexa app, use the names that the customers actually find in that version of the Alexa app. If it's for US, for French, for Italian, for Germany. For example, Lancer should be used when referring to enable button for French version of the customer skills. Now we have activer pour utilisation for smart home and flash briefing skills. In Italian, we have lancia and abilita l'uso. In Spanish, we have iniciar for custom and permitir su uso or activar para usar for smart homes, depending on the local submitted. And for German, I will leave Christoph pronounce them.
No worries. For German, we want you to really use aktivieren or zur Verwendung aktivieren, because that's what the user sees.
Cool.
Beautiful accent, right?
I'm learning so much about foreign languages today. This is really cool. It's always neat to hear the different ways that customers interact with in their home language. It's really awesome.
Nice. Yeah. Finally, the skills that have more than one language variant, like Spanish from Spain, Spanish from Mexico, Spanish from the US, should ideally adapt their vocabulary to each local and not copy the skill content. For instance, in English, the word email can be used in French, in the French version of the skills, but for Canadian French, the speakers prefer courrier when referring to an electronic email message. So the same goes for other local specifics like currency, units of measures, how the users are addressed. These all should be adapted to the local specifics of the locals you want to publish the skill. The developer want to publish the skill.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just want to say that we, the certification testers, are trained to look for these details when testing skills, and all of the recommendations we made will work together to improve the skills quality and customer experience for developers and Alexa users alike. So that's why we were pretty eager to participate in this, because I think this information will help you in certifying the skills that you want to create faster and have them with great quality.
This is terrific. And, if you're not watching this live, you might be watching this on YouTube, meaning this will live on YouTube. And if anybody has any questions about how to certify their skills in all these different languages, I'll just point them directly to this VOD. We'll have this up for you really soon. So really appreciate y'all coming out today. I mean, the time just flew. We only have 5 minutes left. But if there's any more questions in the chat that folks want to ask, feel free to shout those questions out, and we can take them in the conversation. And if you have any more great tips for our developers out there in any country, let us know what you'd like to talk about. It's really nice you care so much about the localized experience of the customers. Kudos. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really great that we're supporting our international community. I'm a big advocate for all the international developers out there. Even though I haven't traveled to Europe very much in my life, I hope someday to get out there and be able to see what y'all are doing, and hopefully try some Alexa skills in other countries. Sometimes I sneaky VPN so that I can try Alexa skills from other countries just to see how they're working. So I'll be in Mexico for a little while just to test out some of those Spanish language skills. But not physically, just in my computer. It's a little trick. But and when you're physically in the region, that's when it's easier to test all those localized skills.
Absolutely.
Any other comments from anybody in the chat? Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been real fun. We appreciate all your great information. We're going to leave this VOD up for folks who want to join in later and watch it later. And if you want to see the conversation on the slide deck that you provided, that gives us a lot of great information people could reference. Next week, no show, folks. I'm going to be out. I'm going to be on vacation, not Mexico. I'm just going to see some family here in the States. But eventually, maybe I'll get back out that way. So thank you all for tuning in today. Thank you for joining us on the show. Thanks everybody who watched the show. And we will see you in 2 weeks. We're going to be having a show about monetization. It's going to be really fun. And then after that, we have a holiday here in the States. So we're going to have another week off. So it's going to be every other week for a little bit.
All right. Enjoy your holiday. Thank you.
Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Magical week. Bye.
Magical weekend.
Thank you.